Hi everyone, this is a video on some of the signs and symbols that you might be asked about in your exam. So the first one we're going to start with is a dead simple one, just an end repeat. So an end repeat is when you have a passage of music and then at the end of said passage you get this here, you get these two lines and then the two dots like that, okay? Now what that means is you start from the start of the music and you go all the way through it, and then once you get to here, you basically go back to the start of the music, and then you start again and you go all the way till the end, and that's you, okay? So this is really used when you go from the start of the music and you want to play exactly the same thing twice. That's that one. So moving on, we'll go to our next one, which is a start and end repeat. Now you can see here, this is pretty much the same as the last one. It's just that we have a different symbol that's here. And it's just like our end repeat sign, except it's faced in the other way. Now that's called a start repeat. Now in this case, what we would do is we'd go to the start and we'd start all the way. And when we get to the repeat sign, instead of going all the way back to the start, you just go back to where the start repeat sign is and then repeat that part. So you're almost thinking of these as brackets and you're just repeating what's in the brackets. Okay? Again, this is for when we want to repeat something and at the end of the repeat, it's the same thing that we want to hear. What happens though if we have, let's say, if I go back to my first example, if we want to play this the first time, but then when we repeat it again, instead of having this bar, we actually want something different to happen here. Well, that's when we can use something called first and second time bars. That means that we can have one bar of something played the first time we play the repeat, or the phrase, and when we repeat it, we can have a different bar for the second time we play the phrase. So let's come down here to first and second time bar, all right? So this time, you can see here, I've got my repeat here, got my end repeat just there, and I have these things called the first time bar that's covered with this bracket at the top, and then my second time bar, which is here. And you can see that the notes in these are different because I want to play a different bar at the end of the repeat each time. So what would happen here if I was playing it is I would go from the start, I would go all the way through it. When I do this the first time, I play the first time bar. Then I get to my repeat here, and then I go all the way back to the start. So all the way back to the start. And then the second time I play it, I go all the way here. And then because it's the second time, I ignore the first time bar and I go straight to the second time bar. There we go. And from here on, this might end here or it might keep going on with the rest of the music. All right. Next, we have something called da capo or da capo al fine. Basically, the first thing to talk about is this sign here, this fine sign, okay? That basically means finish or the end. So whenever you've got that in your music, that's where you'll be ending, okay? Da capo basically means the beginning, okay? It means go to the beginning, and it's just abbreviated to DC. So if you get to a bit where it says DC, all that means is you then go back to the very beginning of the piece, okay? If it says DC al fine, that means you go back to the beginning of the piece and then you keep playing it until you get to the fine sign. And once you get to the fine sign, you stop. So in this case, what we would do is we would go from the start and we go along here, get to our first time bar. Then we go back to the start and we'd go second time all the way to here. Then, oh, sorry, that's wrong because I wouldn't play the first time bar again. Just go along here, miss the first time bar and on to the second time bar. Then we would keep going. And then once we get to here, it says DC al fine. So that means we go back to the start and play to the fine sign. So I'm going all the way back to the start. I would play it again. We're going to include these repeats. So first time, get to there. Second time, here we go. Skip the first time bar. And because we are now at the finny, that means we finish there. Okay? So the thing to take from that as well is that the finny only applies, only comes into play once you've been past the DC Al finny. Notice I didn't start off and go, right, I've got my first time there, and then I get to the second time bar and stop. You have to go all the way through, and it's only once you've been here that you stop when you get to the finny. Okay? So that's da capo. So that when we see DC, it means we go back to the start of the piece and keep going until we get to the finny. Something different to that is dal segno, or DS al finny. Dal segno is abbreviated to DS, and it's almost the same as da capo, except instead of going back to the start, we go to wherever this funky looking sign is. Okay? And then again, we keep going until we get to the finny. So in this case, we would start off and we would go all the way through here, back to a repeat, all the way here, and then second time bar. Then we keep going through the music until we get to here, DS al finny. Now that's telling us to go back to the sign and then play to the end. So from there, if I go from the DS al finny, I've just got to here, means I go to the sign, the dal segno, and then I play through. And then when I get to the finny, that means I stop there. Okay? So slightly different to da capo. Da capo is go back to the beginning and play until you get to the fine. DS means is dal segno, means you go to the sign and then keep playing until you get to the fine. Okay? And the last one we're going to look at is octave higher and octave lower. Basically, that is these symbols here. You've got one that says 8VB, and they've got one here which says 8VA. Now, the best way to remember this is the B means below. So in 8VB, that means you're playing the notes that are in this little bracket an octave lower than where they're written. So these notes here that are kind of encompassed by this bracket, that means when you played them, you would actually play them an octave lower than they're written. Okay? Likewise down here, when you've got octave VA or 8VA, these notes here that are encompassed in this little bracket, they would be played an octave higher or an octave above where they're written on the treble clef. So they would be played an octave higher. So just remember, if it's 8VB, I always think that the B means below. So they would be an octave lower. And the 8VA, just remember that the A is above. So they would be an octave higher. Okay? Hope that helps. Cheerio.